Happy Monday and welcome to Casting the Net, Reeling in Holistic Health, where we care about your health and well-being. This is Coach Rice, your mental health life coach. And I just want to let you know to tune in every Monday at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. I will be showing up on YouTube, my personal Facebook page, my business Facebook page, the Be Awesome Network. Super excited about posting my podcast on there every Monday at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. After the interview is completed, you would be featured on Apple, Spotify, LinkedIn. Those are the platforms that you will be seen on. So stay tuned and don't forget, please share and subscribe and listen and comment and tune in to my next guest. Check it out. It's about to happen. Stay tuned and I'll be with you in a moment.
Welcome to Mondays with Coach Rice. It's a brand new week. The sun's shining bright. A chance to cast your net. Step into the light. Life's full of challenges. It's a winding stream. But with Coach Rice, you'll find your dream.
Happy Monday and welcome to Casting the Net, where we care about your mental and physical well-being. And today I have with me a retired mental health therapist who is now a life coach. Her name is Andrea Clark. Andrea, tell us where you're from and how did you embark upon this journey?
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I live in Las Vegas, which is always exciting. People always get excited when I
they're like, Las Vegas? No.
Yeah, there's more than just the strip here. And what made me embark on this journey? Well, I practiced therapy as a licensed clinician, a marriage and family therapist for 13 years. And I have been doing like digital marketing and educating about holistic mental health for women and families for about 6.5, 7 years.
Okay.
And there was something that led me to do that because I didn't obviously always do that. So I got to a point in my career as a therapist where I really just felt it was time for me to make a pivot. And if I wanted to really impact people the way I knew I could and what was really necessary, that I'd have to walk away from my practice.
Okay, tell me about like the passion behind what you do.
Yeah, so I am here to be a wrecking ball to the system, essentially. Like
Okay.
I am just the system needs to be torn down. And the reason I say that is because people don't really understand that in our Western medicine framework and culture, there is so much suppressed information and there is so much red tape and there are so many things driving what treatments and diagnoses and things are recommended that really are not in our best interest. And we used to live in a time where there was holistic healing, holistic medicine, right? Ayurvedic, Chinese medicine, all these different things, even sunlight. I just read something about people in the medical field. They used to use sunlight to heal certain conditions where they would put their patients in the sun for a certain amount of hours a day. And yet we don't talk about sunlight in the traditional, doctor's office. So
Right.
I was a part of that system for 13 years practicing therapy, and I was on my own holistic healing journey mentally and physically, and I'm learning all these things and I'm taking all these classes, and I can't say any of it to my clients because of all the red tape that exists in the field. And I just got to a point where it was enough is enough. And when I decided to start really openly educating, the more and more I have started to do that, God has been very clear with me. You need to be very, very direct and honest and pointed about the truth. Your job is to shed light. Like your job,
Yes.
essentially be a wrecking ball, if you will, to
Disruptor.
dismantling people's notion and of what it takes to take care of their mental health, especially. Yeah.
Wow. And what made you question the system?
Well, it's really funny because I questioned it when I was a part of it as an adolescent.
Okay.
My parents got divorced. My mom was having, I don't know, a life crisis, I guess. Like she and my father got together when they were very young. And so when they got divorced, she was dating a lot of different people, and our life was pure chaos. I was the oldest daughter with a brother and sister. I was really concerned for how things were going in our life. And so I was responding to the stress and the trauma of my life circumstances. And instead of addressing that, I was misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder, which makes sense.
Okay.
Lots of adolescent girls get misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Wow.
And I was put on medication. And the medication actually made me unwell. I started to have insomnia when I didn't have insomnia before. I started to sleep through my first two classes. I got straight A's growing up, and then I was struggling to stay awake in school. I started to have really dark thoughts, and I was actually put on a medication that has a black box label warning, but at the time of when I was a teen, they didn't have those warnings, and they actually had suppressed a study specifically about the medication I was on, which was Paxil. And there's actually a study that shows that Paxil um, will cause suicidality in
Mm.
adolescents and young people. And so I was put on Paxil, and over time, I started to have really dark thoughts and feelings, and starting to have suicidal thoughts, which I'd never had before. And with my sleep issues, I was then put on sleep medication, and I attempted suicide twice. And I very strongly believe that was the medication, not that I was going to be going that route. And if maybe I wasn't on the medication. And I remember leaving a therapist's office, and the therapist was really cold and very first of all, he was an old white guy with gray hair and a suit and a clip, and I'm like 13. I mean, that's like the worst person you could pick for a 13-year-old girl. And so
You
um
had to say this is creepy.
it was so weird, and I just answered his questions, and it was so awkward. He was like writing everything down and then looking over the clipboard. And I thought I was so mad. And I left the office thinking, I don't need to be in therapy. My parents need to be in therapy. They're the ones going off the deep end, making all these crazy life decisions, and my brother and sister and I are just getting dragged along. And so I decided to become a therapist because I didn't understand that this is how the majority of the system is. I thought it was my experience.
Okay.
So I, become a therapist, and pretty within the first couple years, I realized, oh wow, this is how it's done. This isn't just something that I experienced. This is the majority of the framework that these clinicians and psychiatrists work from. And then I
Wow.
found myself in a pickle, right? Because I had put myself in debt and all this stuff to become a therapist. So I shifted gears and I went into private practice, and I thought, okay, well maybe if I have more liberty and I'm not in the confines of this like nonprofit where we have very strict rules of how we do things and all this stuff. And it was a little better, but it was really hard because I started this holistic healing journey and I started learning all these things, but they really instill the fear in you not to talk about anything that is air quote out of scope.
Right.
Because, oh
Hmm.
my gosh, you could get sued or lose your license or all this stuff. And so I
You
had the
had to stay within the ethical guidelines.
right, but I mean, what they consider in scope, I'm just like, anyway. So I just, I didn't like, I felt like I had handcuffs on all the time, like even my faith. So, I mean, I'm a person of faith, and there were people that I would get this feeling like I'm supposed to pray with them, or they're exploring the potential of having a belief in something bigger than themselves. And I mean, that is so a no-no. You are not allowed unless you obviously are like a Christian therapist or in pastoral care. And so
Hmm.
I was terrified to talk about that. And I got to a point where I didn't want to serve people with all this fear and these
Okay.
handcuffs. And so I eventually got the courage to pivot away. But it took me time, it took me time to do that. And it's been a journey, but I also think that my experience in the mental health system, I was supposed to have it so that I can share everything that I share now, which is pretty much I share a lot of stuff. And so
Oh, wow.
yeah, so it's all, it all worked out the path I was supposed to walk, even if it took me a little while to get to this
So,
spot.
so how do you operate in your freedom now as a mental, as a action, as an actual life coach? How do you incorporate what you've learned and exercise your freedom now?
Yeah, I pretty much say whatever I want to say. That's the first thing. I mean, my social media, my podcast is full of it. I interview people who are going through getting themselves off medications, mental health medications. I interview what we would consider, well, what Western medicine considers alternative medicine, acupuncture and people who teach nervous system all the things that are not a part of Western medicine. And so I educate about all of those things. And I also educate about how to advocate for yourself as a patient or a client, what to
Mhm.
look for, what are red flags, what are green flags, what kind of questions to ask, how to advocate for yourself, especially as a woman. Women are so dismissed in the mental health and medical field, and
Mhm.
marginalized women especially. And so
Yes.
how to advocate for yourself, the things to ask, the things to say, hey, write that down. If they dismiss you, like I want you to put that note in my medical note, like all these things. I would say I'm more of an advocate educator than I am a coach. I am a coach and I do coaching, but my passion is truth telling and really trying to set people free so that they can use their God-given gifts of self-healing. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
discernment to guide them and giving them the resources. So I provide a lot of resources too, like, hey, you can these tests and you can look for these types of practitioners and you can, that kind of thing.
Okay. So if you get a client who has ADHD, who was diagnosed with ADHD and has it,
Yeah.
and they come to you and they want to get off their medication, how do you handle that?
So,
Because
yeah.
that's I'm curious to how you handle it because medication is needed for some mental health issues
So that's interesting. What makes you think that?
because it's a chemical imbalance.
What makes you think that?
Of course, that's what we're taught.
So the
but
chemical
but
imbalance,
it's a chemical
then
like like how would you substitute ADHD
yeah,
like I like depression you it's
totally.
a chemical imbalance you how do you stabilize the client if they come off their medication they're going to spiral.
Yeah, so the first thing I want to say, and I say this with complete respect, is the chemical imbalance theory has been disproven, and it's been disproven for a long time. But Western medicine still spreads it everywhere that we have a chemical imbalance. and it's not accurate. So that's the first thing, is that this idea that people have a chemical imbalance has created a lot of problems in people thinking they need medication. Medication doesn't balance out a chemical imbalance. Now, there are sometimes biological imbalances. For example, I have a gene mutation called COMT, and it's a problem with methylation and how I process certain nutrients that come into my body.
Okay.
And if I do not support my methylation process, I'm more prone to aggressive behavior, like depression and things like that. But it's not a neurotransmitter imbalance. It's more that my body's methylation system needs support to keep my neurotransmitters balanced and my hormones and like all the other things, if that makes sense. And medication, the way medication works is what it does is it fills up the receptors. It doesn't actually create more of a certain kind of neurotransmitter. It
Okay.
actually stuffs your receptors full of, like, let's say, serotonin, right?
Right.
So I'm only saying that because this is the framework in which I work from when I'm
And that's why I'm asking the question. Yeah. So if you,
yeah,
that's why I asked the question.
first of all, I don't help people get off their medication. I'm not qualified to do that. Like, I don't have
Yeah, yeah, I wanted to make that clarification just in case.
totally,
I'm like, are you
but I have a network of people who are
okay?
there's a whole group of psychiatrists now who their whole entire practice is helping people get off medication.
Oh, okay.
And educating about the chemical imbalance theory being not true, and all the things that you can do for your mental
Oh,
health and all of that. So, if I had a client wanting to get off medication, I would refer them to the right person who can support them with that. And if they still wanted to work with me, then I would then support them in putting other things in place to support their body's biology for their mental health and their physical health, if that makes sense.
okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah. And let's say medication wasn't even a part of the scenario, then I would still, with my client, I would make an assessment of what's going on with you and what are some avenues that you might want to take with improving your mental health. And that's a very generalized statement. I work very closely with women who are in perimenopause and or like really overwhelmed moms, and they
Okay.
kind of have some specific sets of needs, right? Like, you see a lot of patterns and themes in their lifestyle, their nutrition, their hormones, like all of those things because of the stage of life that they're in.
Right. And
Yeah.
so let me ask you a question. How do you, as a life coach, there are code of ethics in life coaching, and it's, where they don't, well, we can't cross certain barriers. We have boundaries that we have to stay within the scope of. How do you do that with
So I'm
the,
technically not a life coach. I'm a certified mental wellness coach. So I
oh,
actually
certified mental
have
wellness coach? That's
so I
different. Okay.
Yeah, so I actually have training in functional medicine for mental health and
Okay.
supplementation and nutrition and all of that. So, I
That
understand.
makes a difference. Okay.
Yes, yes, totally, totally.
Right.
But also, if there are things that are outside of my scope or comfort, number one, I'm going to tell them I'm not an expert in this, and I'm going to refer them to the right resource because of my own personal ethics, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I can understand that, people are complex and there's
Are.
so many other things that can be happening that can cause something else like thyroid disease.
Oh yeah.
Could-
So thyroid can be bipolar, like
Yeah.
thyroid issue and bipolar. People will be labeled bipolar and they actually have thyroid issues.
And so those are the things that's
Yes.
why misdiagnosis happen quite a bit,
Oh my
more
gosh.
than it should, and can be detrimental.
Especially in women.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Because we're so complicated. No.
We are so beautifully complicated, but
Yes.
also when your labs come back normal, they automatically say it's some sort of mental health issue. And the thing is, there's a difference between normal and then optimized, and also what they compare somebody's labs to is doesn't make sense. Like most research is done on white young males, and they're comparing our labs and our symptoms to the studies that are done on like 20 and 30-year-old white males. But there, you can't do that. If you want to treat the person, I mean, we don't, our hormones and our makeup is completely different than those young men. And that's what the majority of clinical research, how it's done.
Mm, that's good to know.
Yeah.
And,
So
and
these
that's
are
why we have
the
to.
things I'm saying right now are the kind of things that I talk about on my podcast, on my platform, and with my clients, is really helping them understand that there's things that they're learning that maybe aren't the whole truth or completely,
Right.
accurate or whatever.
And you really have to really do some digging into your own health, your mental health and your physical health, to make sure that you're getting the right treatment that you're getting, because you pay attention to your body. It does tell you,
Yes.
it does speak to you. Right.
Yeah.
And so tell us about a little bit about more about your podcast. What's the name of it? And
It's called The Truth About Mental Health, What They Don't Tell You. And my whole goal with the podcast is to just really reveal the truth about all the different things to consider when it comes to mental health. And so I interview people who have holistic recovery stories where maybe they were a part of the mental health system or even the medical system and have experienced some things and then have figured out how to heal or manage, right, and become more well holistically. Maybe they've gotten off medication or um, maybe they were misdiagnosed type of thing. I also interview a lot of experts and people who work in what's considered kind of like alternative medicine. So, um, acupuncture. I just interviewed an acupuncture practitioner who has like 20 years experience, and he sees tons of people in his practice who come in with mental health challenges, and he has helped them turn so many things around through acupuncture and other things he recommends. Um, I have interviewed, I have like a holistic pharmacist who same story as mine in a way, like couldn't get behind what she was doing and knew that there was a better way and a more holistic way. And so now she educates about how to advocate for yourself and understand medications and, alternatives and things like that. And so I interview a lot of people who have the same belief system that I do, where we want people to be empowered with the knowledge so they can make a more informed decision and
awesome.
know that there
Yes.
are alternatives to just like medication and talk therapy. I mean, you know,
I like holistic,
yes,
alternatives. I'm not a fan of medication. I know that there's times you may need it, but
totally.
I'm not, personally, I would rather give me the holistic view of what I can do to overcome this before I move
Well,
forward.
this is the thing. It's not that I'm not saying, oh, never you. I mean, I have a migraine medication I take when I get a really bad migraine, but I was on three migraine medications and now I'm down to one that I rarely have to take because I have done things for my body to give it the nourishment it needs to where I'm not getting the migraines. And I had them ever since I was 17. I'm 42. So the whole point is not like, oh, never take medication or never take aspirin or whatever. It's more empower yourself with the knowledge that there's things that you can do before you ever even have to
Right.
entertain that option.
And that's what I definitely I
Yeah.
like that I like that approach to educate yourself and also to get to know the medications
Yes.
that you are taking
Yeah.
because they ultimately do have side effects.
Every,
But
every single one has side
and
effects.
yes, and so you have every single one, right? And so with that being said, no, yeah, I kind of figured you wasn't all about taking medication away. I just wanted to get
Yeah, of
a
course.
good understanding of like you know where especially from your background from being
Yes.
a mental health therapist and now doing holistic health and wellness. And what is your onboarding process when you take clients?
So I have something I do first, which is, well, so the first thing I offer is I have a guide that anybody can grab. And well, it's geared for women. It's geared for women similar to I am, right? Like a high achieving woman, her body's in chaos, but she's like, pushing through and figuring it out. But her body's slowly saying, this isn't good. We're going to shut down. So, and it could
Okay.
be physical and mental things and emotional things, because they're both very strongly connected. And so I have a guide where I tell everything that I did to heal myself from fight or flight and hormone imbalance. And it's laid out really well. And so I like that because sometimes people can't invest a bunch of money for a coach or all these different things, and it gives them some incremental steps they can take, stuff that's free, and then other things that as they're going through their journey, maybe they decide to get a test or to do this or do that. And I give them all the things to consider. So
Okay.
I love that because it's a great starting off point for people. And then I offer that it's called a clarity session.
Hmm.
So I almost think of myself as like a kind of like a healing concierge.
Okay.
So, so I've been doing this for so long. I've been helping women with their health alternatively for actually more than 7 years, but like about 12 years. And so I see the patterns and all of that. And so you can book a session with me. I have an intake form, and then we meet for like an hour to an hour and a half, and I will tell you some recommendations, like a roadmap of where you can start your journey.
Okay.
Here's some tests that I think you should get. Here's some lifestyle changes I think that you should make. Here's some things to consider. Here's, these types of practitioners that I would, say would be great for you to go meet with. And if they from there, and then I type them up a report. And if from there they want like hand holding and guidance, then we can talk about what coaching would look like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so you have a whole team that you work with.
Yes, similar to you, how you refer for different things.
Yes.
I
Yes.
have like I have all these different things that I can say. I think you should start here. Like here's the top three things I think. And if I'm not qualified to support them with that, because I'm not qualified to support them with everything, right? I'm not.
Right. None
So
of us are, right?
right. So I might say, I think it would be good for you to have a consultation with this person about your mineral levels, right? Or that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
those type of things matter. And when it comes to
Oh,
your
our
mental health, your
minerals.
mental clarity and everything.
Yes. Oh, our minerals affect our mental and physical health and female health,
Yes.
our hormone health, like our estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, significant. Our sleep, very important, but most people don't know that.
Right. That's
Yeah.
true. And they walk with, yeah, I definitely agree with that. And
Mhm.
so what advice, I know you have plenty that you would want to leave with the audience?
That's such a good question. Always ask questions. Even if you're sitting in somebody's office who's making you feel like you can't, or that you don't know your own body, or that your questions are silly, um, you have to understand that you are your best advocate and nobody's going to advocate for you better than you. So even if you don't fully know what's going on, but you have this feeling something's not right, the diagnosis doesn't feel right, or the medication or what you're telling me just doesn't quite feel right, you have to trust that. There's a reason why you feel that way or you're experiencing that whisper. And if it's okay to go get a second opinion, it's okay to do your own research. There's nothing wrong with doing your own research, and just be your biggest advocate because nobody else will. And I think that a lot of people just kind of shut down and accept what's given to them because maybe they don't have the words or they don't feel like they're qualified enough. You have a PhD in your own experience and your own body. And any practitioner or coach who doesn't co-create with you is probably not the right one because they need to. I firmly believe that people are the experts of their own experience. And if that's not being taken into account, then probably you should go get a second or third opinion. That's my biggest piece of advice that I would leave with people.
Awesome. I definitely agree with that. Definitely get, you know, definitely do your due diligence, right? And
Yes.
so, how can people reach you? Even though I would love to get your link, so I'll put it in the video, but how can people reach you if they want to?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram. My handle is mental health mama underscore Andrea. Or you can find my website at andreaclark.co.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm on
In-
Facebook, but I mean, those are the first two places you can
okay.
go
Okay.
find me.
And in your with your podcast,
Oh, yes.
do you get any feedback from therapists that are practicing from listening to your podcast?
Um, Not yet. I'm sure I will. My podcast is only about 3 months old. No, that's not
Okay.
like
Okay.
4 months old, but I get
Oh,
feedback
okay.
on my social media. Some of them don't like the things I have to say.
I'm
Um,
sure because it's disruptive.
oh yeah. I mean,
It's
I also
disruptive to
talk,
the system, right?
yeah, I talk about how talk therapy isn't really helpful after a certain point either, and that really upsets people. But I mean, that's the point is that not my goal isn't to purposely upset people. My goal is to make people feel something to stop and think, is there any truth to that? So
Okay.
they can work through that themselves, right?
Hmm. Yeah. That's interesting. So yeah, I have to definitely put the podcast link in here as well so people can go and
Yes,
listen to
I would
your
be so
podcast
grateful.
actually because I love to hear what people have to say, especially when it goes against the grain,
Yes,
because that's an area where you can learn, right?
yes, absolutely. Hmm.
And grow. So, wow, this has been a nice dialogue.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Martha.
I appreciate you coming on and sharing what you do. I purposely chose not to get licensed because I wanted to service more people without all of the
Yes,
headache
you
of,
understand. You completely understand.
yeah. I didn't want the headache of like, you have to do this in order to service this state and that state. So
Mhm.
I just chose to do it differently. And I like the life coaching arena so much better.
That's
I
awesome.
believe it helps the mental health field tremendously if you do it right.
Absolutely. There's a
Mhm.
lot of people turning to coaching over therapy at this point because people are becoming so much more aware because though I will say social media can be definitely a difficult place and it can be harmful, but it can also be so powerful because so much people are getting so much more education that they're making different choices for themselves and they're choosing coaching and they're choosing alternative medicine and things like that because they have access to more options now.
Yes, that's true. They are. And thank you so much for coming on. And to the audience, if you thought this dialogue was something that you're more interested in and want to know more about your mental health and well-being, and want to know about holistic health and wellness, please reach out to Andrea Clark. She can help you navigate through anything you may be dealing with. And if you have enjoyed this conversation, please do share, subscribe, comment. It's always great to subscribe because you get a notification when I have a new person on, and I always have amazing people to dialogue with. So thank you so much for listening, and we are signing off.
We'll heal every heart, so join us now. Let's make life suffice. Welcome to Mondays with Coach Rice.